There we go. Well, welcome everyone. We're pretty much on time. I know some people are still coming in. I can see them queuing up in the waiting room there, but Paulie's doing a great job letting them in. Just want to say good morning to everyone. Or I know we've got Nuno. We met a moment ago, joining from Portugal, and often we have a couple of people jumping in from San Fran or various other places, even Bali. So huge welcome wherever you're joining from. Really glad to have you here. Part of the reason we've been pulling everyone together like this the last few weeks is not only to encourage you guys and hopefully put some faith into you, but it's also to make sure you know that whatever's going on for you in this season, that you're not doing it alone. Definitely here, got a community that's here with you to encourage you, to support you, to pray for you. And I did just want to remind you guys, like some of the guys have even been contributing here, like obviously a lot of you guys know Andrew Denton and Kent Medwin. Just chatting to these guys again throughout the week. Like, these guys have said, look, we're more than willing to be praying with people, to be catching up with people like this if people need support and encouragement. So, I'll put my details on here a few times, and you can always just, if it's easy to remember, you can always just get us at businessconnect@hillsong.com, and we can line things up for you. We just want to make sure that you guys are well and truly supported through this time. But it's been so epic that you guys are prioritizing coming together like this. And I know for me it's been really encouraging because definitely feeling the cabin fever a little bit. Been confined to my house, especially with young kids that I want to murder about 12 times a day. But doing this sometimes and things like this is just, it's therapeutic. It's really good for the soul. But
we call it laying hands on the kids so they don't recover.
Yeah, spot on. But yeah, it's definitely a real place. One of my friends actually, who's a pastor at church, I was in one of his pre-service gathering meetings on the weekend, and he was saying, he goes, I told my 3-year-old to shut up. And then he goes, my 6-year-old came up and rebuked me. And he goes, yep, I just told a 3-year-old to shut up. And my 6-year-old rebuked me. Like, yeah, this is a real place. So it's awesome. But just want to encourage you guys that, hey, you're doing well. The fact you're here, the fact you're making an effort to engage, really appreciate it. And many of you might have already seen, we put it on the invite, mentioned that a guy who is an absolute legend in our world and is someone that I definitely look up to a lot, and has been someone that's spoken into my life from near and far, and regularly over the years, is Darren Kitto. And we'll introduce Darren in just a moment. He's going to be sharing with us this morning. And as always, like, I think if you've been holding questions back the last 3 weeks, like, just hit me on the chat, your stickiest questions for Daz. He's the man to cough up some gold. But as you hear Darren speak, that's, maybe the last, if we do get time, we might just throw a question or two his way at the end, and just draw out some of the wisdom in Darren. One thing I know about Darren is he's good fun. He's great for a sledge, but he's an absolute man of wisdom. And he's the type of person that is, you can almost ask anything to, and you never, those sort of embarrassing questions sometimes, like Taz is the person that you can ask that, and he'll definitely won't hold back in giving you an answer. But he always has answered me in a way that I feel like has built my life and just given me a really good wisdom perspective on things. And Daz, I thought to get you started as a bit of an intro, I could just fire just a few like quick start questions at you, just so people could maybe get a little bit of a feel for you. But let's do it, mate. And then I'm going to hand over to you. How long you been working for Hillsong Church, Daz?
This is actually my 25th year.
Wow, good effort. What was your first ever job at church?
Powerhouse pastor. Shout out to Amish Karoya, I saw in the chat.
Yeah, awesome. I think Harry Little who was recently Powerhouse pastor too. We've got a good.
Yeah.
Oh wow!
I mean, he took it to places I could never have imagined. But I just did the best I could back in the day.
It's awesome. He actually did take it to some pretty incredible places.
Yeah,
and mate, what's your golf handicap? This is an important one for people to know.
Oh, mate, that's actually funny. I don't even remember. I think it's 11 at the moment. I haven't played in 6 weeks, and yeah, it's causing me a lot of stress.
Does any quick fire tips for someone? What would you say to people that they're just struggling in ISO right now? Any like little survival tips you would give them?
Um, yeah, don't drink alone is a good one. Um, no, for me, I've been kind of talking to our team about this is don't fear. So don't allow fear to come on you, even though it's going to be tempting, for fear to come on you. We start thinking about what the bad things that could happen. Um, even though you're in social distancing, that doesn't mean you have to be socially isolated. So don't isolate yourself. Do whatever you can to, you know, jump on these kind of calls, FaceTime your friends, just answer the phone whenever someone calls you, even if it's one of those people trying to sell you something, just don't live in isolation. And then the third one is don't panic. Um, I think so often we look at this kind of situation and go, oh man, I don't know how we're going to get through this. I don't know how, but panic's not going to help anybody. Panic's the sort of thing that means we don't have toilet paper, we don't have pasta, we don't have rice because people panicked. But the reality is everybody's consuming the same amount they always were. And if nobody panicked, we wouldn't be in the situation we are. So if you apply that to your life, to your business, to your finances, don't panic. We're going to get through this season. They're the kind of three things I've been encouraging people with.
Yeah, that's gold, mate. Awesome. Are there any for maybe someone that, I mean, now's a great time to possibly be resourcing, to be inputting into your life? Any like resources, maybe podcasts, books, things people could be watching? Any recommendations there?
Um, to be honest with you, I've been probably the busiest I've ever been in my life. So that's probably an area I'm lacking in. I've been tuning into whatever I can from Pastor Brian and from our church in Australia, and then just tuning into other location church services just to kind of get fueled. But I wouldn't say it's been the most productive learning period of my life, that's for sure.
Yeah, no, I'm sure a lot of people can
Honesty.
definitely. Yeah, love it, Daz. Mate, awesome. Well, I reckon if you've got the means to give Daz a little clap in the reactions there, let's make Darren welcome. He's going to share with us for the next 20 minutes or so. And mate, so appreciative of your time. Thank you for giving us the time all the way from California. We love you, mate, and excited to hear what you've got to say.
Thanks, mate. It's always an honour to speak to my fellow Australians, although I do fake myself as an American while I'm over here. In my heart, I am an Australian. I'll never lose the accent. I'll never lose the alignment. I one day want to get an Australian tattoo, Aussie, 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 and then on the back, oi, oi, oi. But, I love being here in America. I love what we're doing as far as reaching people with the channel. And I've been very key part of the Hillsong California Church in the last 6 months. And, shifting everything to online has been a lot more rapid here in California than it was in Australia. You kind of had a little bit of a heads up, bit of a build time. But, we kind of had to go online overnight. And, so yeah, it's been a difficult season, but here we are. We're still going, and church is good. We've seen a lot of people still come to the Lord in this time, and building the church. So I was just thinking about what I would share with you guys, and just thinking about something I've been sharing with our staff over the last probably 4 or 5 weeks. I've been talking a message called "You Can Cut the Tension with the Knife." So, the whole kind of philosophy or belief being that, there is tension in life when it comes to, anything that you do. There's going to be tension when it comes to taking ground. There's going to be tension when it comes to, any kind of movement. There's going to be tension. And so often we try and eradicate tension. We think tension is not good, but actually tension is the thing that's going to drive us forward. Tension is the thing that's going to, create this opportunity for us to move something down the path. And, I guess as a younger leader, I was always looking at ways to eradicate tension. Whenever there was, tension amongst the team, I'd try and be the mediator, get everybody kind of together and say, look, what's your side of the story? What's my side of the story? Okay, let's try and, get to the point where we can be in perfect harmony without realizing that there's actual power in tension. Not that we want everybody to be at war with each other or everybody to be fighting with each other, but the reality is it's tension that moves us down the field. A few months ago, I was given a gift by Terry Christ. Put hands up if you know who Terry Christ is. He's our Phoenix pastor. We say Terry Christ in America. I've learned to speak in pounds. So Terry Christ is about $1.50. That's 150 pounds. I think he's about 60 kilos. He doesn't have an ounce of fat on his body. He gave me a gift. It was a compound bow for hunting. I don't hunt, but I shoot targets. So he wanted to bless me with it. So he gave me this bow. Now, the part of the story I wanted to share with you was he gave me this bow, and when he gave it to me, he said, I'm not sure if you're going to be able to pull it back because, it's set at the highest tension point that it can be for the bow. And I looked at him and I thought to myself, at that time I was about 380 pounds. I'm now about 250, which is, thank God, to gastric sleeve surgery. But I thought to myself, who's this guy who weighs 150 pounds? He's telling me that he doesn't think I'm going to be able to pull this bow back, So I just kind of laughed at him, said, yeah, I think I'll be able to manage it, Anyway, I got to the point where I was going to practice shooting the bow, and I had about 6 or 7 of my mates around. And so I thought, I'll show off. I'd be able to just pull this bow back. And I went to pull it back, and I couldn't pull it back. Now, it's very embarrassing for me because Terry is like half my weight. His arms kind of go straight down. They don't have any definition on them, and yet he's able to pull this back without too much effort, so it seems. But I couldn't do it because I hadn't actually adjusted to that tension. And so I got this. This is a tension builder. And so I've been building up my ability to be able to handle the tension, the old bow trainer, the old tension trainer, because I've understood that, for me to be able to project the arrow where it needs to go, for me to be able to, achieve what I want to achieve with the bow, I have to be able to handle the tension. But what most people in life try and do is they eject out of the tension because they don't want to manage tension. But here's the thing. I think all leaders, all people who want to build something great in their life, they learn how to manage tension, not how to avoid tension. And so I want to just talk a little bit about that, kind of give you a few tensions that I've learned how to manage, or at least that I think we need to learn how to manage. And then at the end, we can kind of have a bit of a discussion about it. One of the ones I wanted to talk about today, I've got about 25 of these tensions, and I'm just going to manage a few of these in the next few minutes. But one of them is the tension between what I think can be done and what can actually be done. If anything, the coronavirus has taught us is what we thought could be done and what could actually be done are very different. We, as a church, have been going for 5 years here in California, and we've always wanted to have a podcast, some sort of a online experience, something like that. And we've been kind of moving towards that. And to be honest with you, it's always been at the bottom of the list, and it hasn't happened yet. I thought about this. We found out on Tuesday that we were going to have to shut down on Sunday. Between Tuesday and Sunday, we filmed an online experience, we edited that online experience, and we launched our online church. If you had have asked me before coronavirus, could we launch an online church service in 4 days? 100% the answer would have been no. The answer would have been, it's going to take 6 months, it's going to take a year, we're going to need to buy all this equipment, we're going to need to build up to it. And the truth is, it probably would have taken longer. But because of necessity, we actually realized that we could do more than we thought we could do. I heard a story about Craig Rochelle. He talks about how a guy asked him to go underwater and hold his breath for as long as he could. And, he came up after about 1 minute and 5 seconds. The guy then said to him, look, I think you can achieve a whole lot more. He gave him a few little tricks on how he could do it, told him to go underwater, started to count him down. And, Craig followed all those tricks that he showed him to do it, but the guy was tricking him, and he was reading out a different count to what was a reality. He was saying to him, you're at a minute when really he was at a minute 30, or you're at 2 minutes, and he was really at 2 minutes 30. And it ends up that Craig, who thought he could only do 1 minute, or in his own capacity could only do 1 minute, actually could do over 3 minutes underwater. What we think we can do versus what we can do are very different. And it's the tension that it's actually going to stretch us to be able to grow and stretch us to be able to achieve a whole lot more. I think some of the things that we do as business owners or as leaders is we try and lead things to growth phases, or we try and lead things and we say to people, I want to get to this point. And so often the first thing we hear back is, oh, look, I don't think we can do that. I've just decided as a leader in this season, I'm not going to listen to the first thing being out of somebody's mouth, I don't think we can do that. I want to grow. I want to push the boundaries. I want to make my mark on the earth. I don't want to, just kind of go through the motions and be limited by what people think is their capacity, because people are always going to reduce themselves to a lowest common denominator. But here's some things I've been asking myself as a leader, because the temptation in this season is to push everything. Go, oh, we've got to do this and we've got to do that, and now's the time for innovation. Everybody's got time, and if we're not careful, we can spend all this time pushing things down the path, but those things aren't really the things that matter. So I've given myself a few rules when it comes to proposing new ideas or stretching ourselves. So I'm going to share them with you. Hopefully they'll help you. Ask yourself the following questions when proposing new ideas to the team. The first one is, will I still want to be doing this in a couple of years' time? We've all followed leaders who are flash in the pan. We've all followed business owners who are flash in the pan. They get an idea one week. We all spend all our effort that week going down that trail, only to get to the end of the week and they go, oh, I've decided not to do that. So the litmus test for this one is actually, is this something I really want to invest into? Do I want to be known for this or doing this in a couple of years' time? Because if I do, it's worth pushing. But if I don't, maybe it's not the right thing to push on. Have I got all the relevant data is the next question. Don't just go off a whim, an idea. So many people have whims and ideas, but the truth is there's probably a whole lot of data out there that could help you decide whether or not this is something that we should do or not do. And I've just learned to look at data, look at ideas and make decisions accordingly. Don't, just make them on a whim. The next one is this in response to an individual frustration that could be addressed individually? So I guess examples of this are when staff aren't performing in quarantine. I hear about a staff member who's not doing what's asked, and so I get frustrated, and all of a sudden I get frustrated with the whole team rather than just making a phone call to that individual and going, can we shift and adjust the way that you're working to be more in line with what everybody else is doing? I think if we're not careful, we can take this scattergun approach and get frustrated by one little thing and change everything, rather than realize, hey, maybe just a direct conversation with one person could fix this situation. And I think the other thing is, have I counted the cost in what it counts in other areas? Because if I push everybody towards a new initiative, then maybe there's some old initiatives that are going to suffer, and I'm okay with that. So for me, I've just decided that I'm going to cut a few things off in this time, because some of those things we've just been doing because we've always been doing them. And I'm going to redirect efforts and energies into new areas. So that's the first one, the tension between what I think can be done and what can actually be done. The tension needs to be there, because, what I want to do and what can't be done, somewhere in the middle, that tension is the truth. So the second one is the tension between what I'm called to do and what I'm currently doing. So often we think about, Pastor Brian always says this, whatever, Ecclesiastes 9 and verse 10, whatever your hand finds to do it with all your might. For there is no work or device or knowledge or wisdom in the grave where you're going. This understanding that what I've got in my hand right now, I should really give it everything that I've got. This tension is that we feel like we're called to so much more. My business is this size. I feel it's called to be this size. I wish it was this size. I focus on this size, but at the same time, while I'm focusing on this size, I'm neglecting this size. But the reality is, if I don't neglect this size, if I build this size, then my business could potentially become this size. Don't neglect what's in our hand. The tension between what I'm actually currently operating in, my current circumstances, versus what I'm called to do. I believe that I'm called to lead a massive channel. I believe I'm called to lead, a massive international ministry for Hillsong Church. But sometimes it's not what it looks like when I'm dealing in the day-to-day. But if I lose sight on the day-to-day, then I'll never really achieve the big picture. And I think sometimes what's in our hand can become frustrating. What's in our hand can be something we despise because we see ourselves as so much bigger. We see our opportunity as so much bigger. But the truth is, this is what I've got right now. Well, what I've got right now is the most important thing in my life. Not what I dream of somewhere down the track, but what I actually possess in my hands right now. The opportunity you have right now, the opportunity you have in quarantine, the opportunity you have in self-isolation, whatever you've got in your hand right now. Maybe your business has been reduced, maybe your opportunity has been reduced, but what you do with what you have right now is going to determine where you go in the future and what you have in your hand after quarantine and in the future. So for me, I think about this like this, I see a great marriage as part of what God wants for my life. I believe that God's called me to have a great marriage. But sometimes that's not what it looks like. Sometimes it's tension. Sometimes there's disharmony. Sometimes there's disunity. But what I have right now in my hand, if I don't invest into that, I'll never see what God has for my marriage in the future. I can't look at it and go, oh, look at one day we're going to have a great marriage, but fail to deal with the situation in my hand. I have to actually deal with the situation in my hand to get to the potential that God has for me. I want to raise great kids. I want to raise world changers, but sometimes they're just brats, and I just want to go to my room and ignore them, close the doors, put the parent lock on the door, self-isolate away from the kids. But the reality is, this is a time where I really need to invest into my kids. When they're not who I want them to be, I can't be frustrated by that. I've got to actually deal with what's in my hand right now. It's the same with your finances. What we believe that God has for our finances, maybe that's not what's the reality right now. But if I can just learn to deal wisely with what's in my hand right now, for example, if I just made a decision that, I want to budget wisely, I want to, not spend in this season, I want to, make wise decisions financially. I can't be thinking about where I want to be when it comes to the decisions I need to make today about my finances. I need to make the decisions about my finances based with what's in my hand. And, I want more opportunity. I want to do a bigger job. I believe that God's got promotion for me. I want a bigger role in the company. I feel like that's my calling. But the reality is, the job I have right now isn't what I feel like I'm called to do. But it's how I manage the job that I'm called to right now that's going to determine what my future and whether or not what's in my hand aligns with my calling. So that tension, it's there. The reality between believing for something more, but actually having something smaller in my hand, whilst that tension remains, it's healthy. Because if I cut that dream off, there's no tension and I just stay where I am. If I don't have this belief for the future, then I don't deal with what's in my hand. It's the tension that actually creates, the power, the tension. The next one, I'll give you one more. Is that okay? Everyone okay? Still with me? Is this helpful? This one's a bit personal. The tension between what I think I am and what other people think I am. It's a tension, I have been on both sides of this tension. There's been times where I've looked at my own life and gone, I'm not good enough. I don't know if I'm, God can use me in the way that I feel like I'm being set up to be used by God because of all these flaws that I have in my life. And so the way that I view myself actually drags me back and I don't fulfill the calling of God on my life. And then there's been other times where I think I'm better than I am. I think I'm great. I'm doing great. Why isn't there more opportunity coming my way? Romans 12:3 talks about not thinking of yourself more highly than you ought. There's been times in my life where I've thought about myself more highly than I ought. And the reality is I needed to be thinking of myself back here somewhere so that I could realize that there was all this growth available to me. It's the tension. It's the tension that takes me from where I think I am, between what I think I am, what others think I am, that's going to take me where God wants me to go. I never want to give one individual person, the ability to be able to emotionally affect me in a negative way. I mean, the truth of the matter is there's people in my life that, if they say certain things to me, they'll probably affect me a lot more than if just some random person in the street calls me a name. But you can never give the power of your potential away to somebody else's voice. You've got to make sure that you have this belief in you about what God's called you to do. And there might be people who doubt. There might be people who question. Sometimes we can learn from that question. Sometimes people's doubt will be the tension that we need to actually take us forward. But we can't give people the power to eliminate us from the race. We've got to make sure that we give nobody that power. Whilst at the same time, the tension is that we need people to speak into our life that are going to drag us forward. We need people to challenge us and say, hey, you might think you're nailing that, but I think there's some areas in your life that you need to challenge and that you need to change. Those are the people that are going to take us forward. So whilst they can't take us out, we do have to give people the power and to take us forward. And that's the tension. Making sure that, what people speak into our life is going to take us forward. That's that tension that we need to manage rather than drag us down and, hey, I'm going to hit the tiles for a couple of weeks because somebody said something negative about my idea, about my future, about my potential, about my business. I've basically finished Netflix in quarantine. So, there's no shows I haven't watched. I'm just being honest with you. I've watched more shows than anybody on Netflix. I've started to, I consume shows, like I binge watch them, usually from the hours of 4 a.m. to 8 a.m. I don't sleep much. But I've been watching a show called Shark Tank. Do you guys have Shark Tank in Australia? Yep. So yeah, I've been watching a show called Shark Tank, and it's where these guys come in and they pitch a business idea, and they get feedback on the idea, they get offers on the idea, and I've watched it enough episodes because I'm a binge watcher. I've watched enough episodes to realize that there's certain types of people and people respond in certain different ways to feedback. Feedback is one of the most powerful things you can have in your life, especially from people who have a perspective that's higher than yourself. So these guys, obviously, they're more advanced. They're giving feedback. And so anyway, I've watched and I've come to the conclusion that there's two kind of approaches. There's the salesman approach and there's the student approach. The salesman approach is the person who goes into this situation, who manages this tension by saying, everything that you say, here's the reason why it's not true. They go on the salesman approach. They go on the front foot. They start to counter everything that the sharks are saying by counteracting what they're saying. So, the sharks are saying, you need to work on this. And oh yeah, well, we've done this and that didn't work, or we've tried this and that didn't work. You all know people who respond with the salesman approach. You try and help them, you try and give feedback to them, but they just go into sales mode and they try and defend their position. Whereas the student approach is the student isn't there. They're there for the deal, but they're not there for the deal. They're there to learn. They're there to grow. They're there to understand that these 5 people in the room are going to be able to speak into their life and actually tell them some things that they don't want to hear. Some people get told things like, hey man, you're cheesy, or you come across salesy, or your numbers don't add up, or your value's off. And all of a sudden these guys, they start to listen. And I watch it as a leader, and I start thinking about, who would I want to work with? Do I want to work with the person that's in denial, that's trying to defend their position? Or do I want to work with the person who is open to feedback, willing to learn, be a student, and actually grow from the tension? Every single time I look at the student and I go, I want to work with the student. I don't want to work with the guy that's got an answer for everything. I want to work with the guy that understands that he's got to grow. So the tension between what I think I am and what others think I am. Who do you have in your life that can look you in the eye and be honest with you and say, You know, you think your business is all that. You think who you are as a person is all that. But the reality is where you are and where you think you are very different. I want to encourage you, if you don't have somebody in your life that you would willingly listen to, that would speak into your life and actually challenge you to go to the next level, find out who that person is and invest everything into that relationship, because it's the most important relationship that you have in your life. I know for me, I've got people who tell me what I want to hear. A lot of people that tell me what I want to hear. But the most valuable people in my life are the people that are stretching me, challenging me, and growing me. And so I want to invest into those relationships. So there you go. There's my 3 tensions. I think I've used my time. Dan Purdy-Smith.
Hey, that was absolutely brilliant, Daz. Thank you, mate. I think I just saw I've never seen the chat be so active of people just putting positive comments there. I know that was so helpful for me, no doubt for everyone else. Couple of questions, if you don't mind. Just a couple of these people had just sent through to me. Someone asked, like, if your boss or client is wanting you to do something that you just don't think is possible, how would you manage the tension between, you know, being a can-do person and obviously being a team player, but also just trying to do something that you just cannot do?
Okay, so I've got 6 points on that. So when it comes to asking yourself when you hear big ideas from your leader, okay, so when you hear big ideas from your leader, you have to ask yourself the question, do I have what it takes to make this stretch, or I'm going to need more help? You know, the reality is if you need more help, you've got to be willing to ask for more help. Yes, the answer isn't no, the answer is yes, but I'm going to need this to be able to facilitate that. Ask yourself this question, am I scared of working differently? I think people get into these patterns of this is how I do my job. I sometimes look at what my staff do in a day and I think to myself, why are they spending all that time doing all those things that don't mean anything to me or matter to me? So it's a matter of actually asking your boss, look, I'm spending all this time on this. How would you advise me to work differently? What would you want me to lay down? Am I still passionate enough about this to take it forward? Sometimes the reason we say no is because we've lost our passion. So be willing to address the fact that we may have lost our passion for this. And so we need to get out of the way so that our boss can empower somebody else who's got the passion to actually take this thing forward. Here's another one. Am I always the one to say no? You know, there's people who are always the one to say no in my team. And I always know who's going to say no. If you're that person, then you have to ask yourself a question, why is that? How do I become somebody who isn't always the one to say no? How do I, grow my yes? How do I bless my yes? How do I stop being the one that leans always towards a no? What am I afraid of that could be valid when considering this idea? What am I afraid of? So, boss comes up with a new idea. We get afraid of certain things because we're looking somewhere down the track and we see fear. I think sometimes we just got to understand it's not our job to be afraid of the future, but actually to try and accomplish the current and the present and deal with what's in our hand. And the other one is who in our organization or who in our company, if I was able to empower them, could help me to pull off this idea. So often when we get asked to do something, we think about our own limitations or our own, stoppages. But there's other people inside the organization that have got a bit of capacity, they've got a bit of room that would love to be engaged in new ideas. And so we've got to sometimes think outside the box and go, okay, maybe in their spare time, this person could actually help me accomplish these things. So there you go. I actually had that answer prepared.
That's perfect. It was meant to be. Yeah, straight off the bat when you're like, I've actually got 6 things. I was like, gee, you're impressive.
Well, I cut it out. I was going to kind of drill down on that, but I cut it out, but I shouldn't have.
No, well, we got there, which is awesome. Hey, we've actually got Magoo here has a question. I might ask Magoo if you wouldn't mind unmuting and asking Daz your question in person, mate.
How are you, Darren? I'll tell you something that you want to hear, mate. You're spitting gold. Very, very good.
Oh,
my wife was just in the kitchen and she's like, who's that? I'm like, it's Darren Kitto. And she goes, that is amazing. I need to get more people onto that Business Connect. So well done.
Oh, that's good, mate. I love you, bro. I remember the first time I met you was you were about 15. Would that be right? in the balcony at the Hills Center, sitting up the back. Your dad was playing the spoons. You and your brother were kind of sitting in the balcony awkwardly. And I went up and tapped you on the shoulder and asked you to come to my Connect group. And honestly, mate, I've loved you since that day, and I'm so proud of what you're doing.
Awesome. Well, thanks, bro. Question for you. What was key for you to jump into the unfamiliar America world and start running and dominating like a Kitto does?
I think what I didn't realize was how much of my past I was going to have to die to. I moved to America. I'd been on our staff for 20-something years. And, to be honest with you, I had a certain level of credibility and respect in our team in Australia. But when I came here to California, that wasn't afforded to me. The credits didn't transfer. Like when you go from Qantas to American Airlines, they do a status match. But when I moved from Australia to America, from Hillsong Australia to Hillsong California, there was no status match. And I was actually forced to go back to grassroots and basically reestablish my credibility. And so, for me, it was humbling. It was very humbling. I had to, prove myself over and over again. I had to, continue to be the person that I was. In our team in Australia, there would be I guess, what would be afforded to me was I was trustworthy, as somebody that, if I told you something, that it wasn't because I was trying to drag you down, but because I was trying to take you forward. And, I operated in a certain level of credibility that wasn't afforded to me here in California. So I think the thing I learned was I had to go back to square one. I couldn't come in and transfer credits. And I think, for people who are transitioning out of one organization into another organization, that's a very, very important lesson to learn. You might have a new job or a new opportunity, but people don't really care what you achieved in your last company if they don't trust you in your new company. So just, building trust, spending the time, building the foundations with new people, and not just assuming that, your reputation would precede you. That was kind of the biggest lesson I learned.
Very cool, Daz. I actually another question. Ask on behalf of someone in the group. How your third point there? You're talking about someone that can speak honestly into your life. If someone just didn't have access to a person like that, how could they possibly go about getting that?
I would suggest, and this may be controversial, that if you don't have a person in your life that is honest enough to speak into your life, that the problem isn't that you don't have the person. The problem is that you don't know how to receive it. And the people in your life that have tried to be honest with you have shied away from it because of the way that you've responded or you've reacted to people giving feedback. If I refer back to that Shark Tank principle, I watched a guy go in there, and had what I thought was a great idea, a great business proposition. His valuation was a little bit off, which hurt him, but he basically got demoralized by the sharks. But he sat there and he looked at every shark in the eye and he said, "Thank you for your feedback. I'm going to make changes. Thank you for your feedback. I'm going to make changes." I think there's not a lack of mentors. There's a lack of mentees. If you open heart say to someone, I remember getting a text message off a friend of mine a few years back, and he said to me, "Hey man, tell me 3 things I need to work on." And I just said, "You don't want that. You don't want me to do that." And he goes, "No, I really want you to do that. I trust you enough. I want you to do that." I gave him 3 things to work on. He didn't want me to do that. He worked out pretty quickly that I was going to go deep and I was going to go for the stuff that was going to actually change his life. And to be honest with you, the text exchange that came back from that was disgruntled. It was fired up. It was, "I can't believe you think that." But we got to the point where I said to him, "Look, mate, I can give you 3 things you need to work on that are surfacey, or I can actually challenge the core of who you are as a person and help you to grow." And he goes, "Okay, I receive it." Over the next year, I didn't hear anything from him. I thought maybe, he doesn't like me anymore. But a year later, he texted me back and he goes, those 3 things you told me to work on, I've spent the last 12 months working on them. He goes, "I want to thank you for speaking honestly and boldly into my life, because I've actually grown so much in the last 12 months, more than any other period of my life because of those three things. You know, and I think it's never that we don't have people. It's just that we don't know how to listen to those people or empower those people to speak into our life. That's just my perspective on that.
Yeah, love it, mate. Gee, that's good. And yeah, it's quite confronting too, I think, for anyone listening. Like I've always loved on Shark Tank how often the sharks will say, we invest in people just as much as ideas, and we want to invest in you as a person, pitching the idea. That's always really stuck out to me watching that. But Daz, I wonder, just as we finish, mate, thank you. Honestly, sensational. I feel like we were just even skimmed the surface of you know, what you have to bring, and we're so grateful, mate, that you carve out the time. You mentioned before you're busier than ever, so we don't take your time for granted, mate. But wondering, as we finish, if you wouldn't mind just praying over everyone here. You know, people here. Some people are doing really well. Some people are struggling. Some people are just uncertain. But if you could just pray over us, and yeah, I think that'd be amazing, mate.
I will do. I'm just watching all these people in the chat come through. Someone, Paul McMillan, I want to thank you for calling me Darwin. I'm not Charles Darwin, but you know, it's awesome to see so many of my friends here, and this is an honor to do this, man. If ever you want me to do it again, I'm happy to do it. I've got another 20 odd tensions, so I'm happy to do it. But Lord, I just thank you. I thank you for every single person here, Lord. Faithful people, Lord, building your kingdom, like sacrificing everything that they have, Lord, to build something of significance so that they can help, you know, build and resource the kingdom. And Lord, I just pray during this season of just extreme unknown, extreme, you know, lack of foresight or lack of understanding of what's going on, Lord, that you would protect your people, that you would cause your face to shine upon them, that you would bring peace into this situation, into this circumstance. Lord, I pray that businesses represented in this Zoom link would flourish. I pray your blessing over them. I pray that there would be a new innovation or a new way to somehow generate higher revenue, some way generate, you know, the opportunity that you have for them, Lord. I pray that we wouldn't be boxed in, that we wouldn't be limited by what we've previously known, but would understand that you want to bring new ideas and new revolutions during this time. And Lord, that would take us into a new level going forward. Lord, I pray for online ideas. I pray for online opportunities. I pray that you would give people, you know, supernatural ideas that would take their businesses and their opportunities to the next level. Lord, I believe for your blessing, for your increase, for your favor, for your provision, for your prosperity. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you again, Darren. And mate, I think we might need to, you know, we'll chat offline about getting you back for part 2, if that's all right.
Anytime, mate. Anytime. I'm
awesome.
free for the next hour if you want.
Well, look, we'll chat, but we'll take you next week if you're available. Just wanted to say to everyone, thanks for joining. Hopefully we'll see you guys all online tonight. We're praying as a church with Pastor Brian at 7 p.m. if you're on the East Coast, or Paul up there in Darwin, Darren in Darwin, be at 6:30. But bless you guys. Have a great day. We love you, here for you, and look forward to staying in touch, everyone.